Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and today I've got a terrific guest. This is one of the brightest lights here in the city of Ponchatoula. She is a woman that has inspired countless of young people to follow their hearts and to embrace their creativity and to make our world, especially our local scene, our art scene here, a better place. So I am, of course, talking about Melissa Porter, or Miss Missy, as she's known to my sons and her other students at Sunshine Studio, formerly known as the Big Red Barn. Miss Missy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a treat.
Well, it's really exciting to get you here. As I mentioned before we went live, I think today is the first time ever that my son James has shown any interest in the show. When I told him that you would be our guest, his face lit up and he was excited. And so anyway, I promised him I would tell you, hey, and I'll start with that. Why don't we kick things off with you telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm Melissa Durel Porter. I live here in Ponchatoula. I own and operate and clean and do everything else at Sunshine Studio, which is a creative arts center for children. I was born in Mandeville. Moved over here right after Katrina, although I've been in Ponchatoula junking for years and years before that, back when we had antique shops everywhere. And, I'm just a creative muse, part Mary Poppins, part Muppet woman, and just
I love it.
kid at heart.
You warmed my heart whenever you mentioned the antique shops. Because throughout my childhood, my mom had an antique shop right there on Pine Street.
Oh, which one was your mom's?
Layrisson Walker Limited. It's now it's where Pink Agave is now.
That was a good one.
Yeah,
that one was always so beautifully set up. It had you walked in. Yeah, when I was a kid, I couldn't afford anything in that place, but it was beautiful. Yeah.
My mom and her partner Nietzsche Walker, who's an acclaimed interior designer. They really had good taste, and Nietzsche in particular. But that'll be a treat for my mom to hear when I report that back to her, because she really loved that shop, and I love that building, the Gateway building. My law practice was upstairs for 12 years, so it's a neat old place. But
I was fascinated to see all of the pictures of all the good loot that came out of the safe recently.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
I cannot deny a good pile of junk and ephemera and wonderful things to use in my art, or just to like pile up in the corner somewhere and one day use. But those things were irresistible. Good time.
It was such a special era in Ponchatoula's history. And your neighbor right up the road from you, I called him Uncle CJ, but CJ and Mary Scanduro were dear friends, and he was kind of my adoptive uncle. I was partners with his nephews and brother in their law practice for a while. Great family, and there were so many great owners down there. Still are. I saw Miss Brenda walking by my office here the other day. There's so many good folks. So it's neat to see the next evolution of kind of the downtown Ponchatoula theme evolving to this artistic angle that you're part of, because I think that theme brings people there, and it's exciting. So you mentioned you grew up, I think, in Mandeville, right?
I did.
What was life like over there when you were coming up?
Well, we grew up at the end of a dead end road. The end of a dead-end road in the middle of the woods, which sounds kind of rustic, and it wasn't really rustic, but it was just different, We'd play in the woods, build clubhouses. We were really kind of given free reign. We were semi-feral, our parents were wonderful. They're still around. They still live in the same house. Wonderful.
What a blessing.
Go and see them. Traffic has changed a lot around there. Mandeville, growing up there, born in 75 at St. Tammany Parish Hospital, and going home to that same house, and they've been there for 50 years. A lot of changes in Mandeville for sure. My grandpa had a stationery store in the French Quarter called Durel, and he was one of the first commuters. So right after they finished the causeway, they moved over and built a house in Mandeville where my dad was raised. And so they saw it, from not necessarily dirt roads, but definitely not
But
legally
close.
now.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a bizarre thing to see how it is,
Sure.
you know, the development and the lost real estate opportunities.
Right.
It's like,
Well, you know, in
used
my
to be
family, there's a great,
$300 a month. Are you
yeah.
kidding? Anyway, I digress.
Well,
But
in my family, the real estate joke is we grew up going to Seagrove when we were kids, and back then it was nothing like it is today.
where?
Seagrove in Florida, the beach
Okay.
over near Destin, and now it's very ritzy and obviously very expensive and high dollar. But
Right.
once upon a time when we were kids, my dad was offered the opportunity to buy some real estate there, which of course he could not afford. You know,
Well, that's the thing. Exactly.
and so my older brother, you know, who knows a lot more about real estate than I ever will, has always given him a hard time about that. You know, Dad, if you just could have done, and Dad said,
Right.
well, you know what, son, right now you could probably pick up that property for what, 20 million bucks. One day your kid will be saying, why didn't you get it? It was only 20 million bucks. And
I know.
it was like, you know,
Yeah.
$10,000 or whatever the price was in the 60s
Yeah.
was just as unattainable as 20 million
Absolutely.
today.
Exactly.
But
But still, it's just interesting to think about that. But
for sure.
You know.
And you know, you and I are about the same age, so this area is not grown in the same way or reach the same heights real
It's
estate
getting
value.
there.
But it's real similar. And to come up here
Yeah.
and just see, particularly in Beatico, you know, the stretch between your hometown
Oh,
and here, it's
crazy.
really night and day.
It is.
So you mentioned, you know, your great parents. How big was your household? Did you have siblings running around? I mean, when you're living in the country like that, you had to have somebody to play with.
Well, that's true. And I don't know, you know, you say country, I guess technically it was country, but I never felt like we lived in the country. Although,
Right.
I don't know, it's like 4 miles down Highway 59 from Old Mandeville. I mean, it's really not that far out. But my mom said when they moved out there, people were asking them, like, well, what are you going to do way out there? So thinking it was like they were moving to the moon instead of Old Mandeville.
Right.
But I have a twin sister. She lives in the Austin area, I think in Georgetown. And I have an older sister, 3 years older, Jenny, who lives in Savannah, who's actually in Amsterdam on a Tulip River cruise with my mom right now. And I'm really jealous. So if they're watching this later, so I'm going next. Yeah.
Well,
my sister's
great
Jenny was I'm sorry?
Oh, no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Jenny was like the best big sister you could ever ask for. Just a wonderful role model, although I didn't always follow in her footsteps regarding like grades and doing well in school and leadership and stuff like that. But she, something special about Jenny was she would never fight with us. As you know, usually siblings fight. I know myself and my twin sister, like, we would like come to blows and be threatening each other with butter knives while we were cleaning the kitchen. I mean, but Jenny, I guess one day she saw her friends, the older sister and the siblings fighting, and just kind of thought to herself, I don't want to fight with my family. And she never did. And you could like take clothes out of Jenny's closet and borrow them and wear them to school, and she'd see you show up with her blouse on and she'd be like, nice shirt. And she wouldn't get, I mean, she might be kind of a little peeved, but she would never get really mad at you.
Yeah.
And I can't say the same thing about my twin sister, but we were all tight, you know.
That'll get you stabbed by other siblings.
Yeah, right. I mean, so, but both of them are just great. And everybody, each one of us is, of course, unique and did our own thing. You know, Jenny could do anything, really. Anything she wanted to do, she could do it. Susie also did very well in school, was interested in, it seemed like, art and sailing and different things like that. And, you know, and I was just kind of.
I'm glad you mentioned art. Are all of you interested in art? Because certainly the places they move to live are, you know, kind of artistic havens. So
they're, you know, they're not artists. I think we were just kind of raised in a creative household where, it's kind of, I don't know, sort of where my philosophy comes from is just give the kids the materials and give them a little bit of gentle guidance, maybe a nudge here or there, and then get out of the way. Let them find out things on their own. Let them make those discoveries and don't hover. I mean, for better or worse. I mean, my parents were great, but they didn't exactly hover over us, which I'm really thankful for, because it allowed us to find ourselves in a lot of ways and find our own voice, and figure things out instead of having somebody do it for you. I know as a parent, I have a 16-year-old, so we're out of the kid time and into the teenage time, which is really challenging. It's so much more challenging than little kids. Little kids I can do. Teenagers.
What do they say? Little kids, little problems. Big kids, big problems. Is that not true in your house?
Yeah, I guess that's true. But as a parent, it's hard to not want to be like, why don't you do it this way? Come, do it.
Right.
Why are you doing it like that? Because you have, I don't know, I guess more attachment to the kid and the project. So there's something to be said for just being able to just leave it alone. And I do a pretty good job with my own kid, but I do a really good job with your kids doing that, So, and I see it all the time. I'll do birthday parties and stuff and see the parent over, well, no, you got it. And I'm just like, I totally get it. And then some of them are standing there just like, I'm trying not to touch the project. So I understand how all of that works. But let's see, Susie was a marine biologist, actually. So she would go around Texas and shock fish, go to all the lakes and shock fish and do the testing on them for different contaminants and stuff. And that was well before she had her kids. She has I don't know if Elizabeth's 20 or 21, but anyway, that was a whole other life for her. Now she's into like the junk business. So if she's, people need to do estate sales or something like that, she'll help with those kinds of things and auctions and stuff. Jenny worked for Leukemia Lymphoma Society for years, and she's just now retired, and she's gotten into the travel industry. So she's started a company called Verdant World Travels. And that's why she's on that river cruise right now.
Yeah, so she and your mom
are Antarctica too.
Wow.
So I mean, she's just living the life, which is fantastic. That's another love of mine is travel. So
yeah, well, tell us about that. Where do you like to go? Do you have a favorite spot that you return to? Do you go somewhere new every time? What are some of your travel joys?
I've been a lot of places. My favorite place lately is New York City. I've been there several times and really enjoy it. I don't know why. I just like it. I like public transit. I like stuff going on. I like the architecture, the art, the people, the food, everything. Always something to do. Of course, when you're on vacation, that's a whole other life where there's always something to do when you're on vacation. It's not like your dishes are sitting in the sink. And so travel's always
more to do in some
different
spots
headspace. Philosophy, I enjoy Chicago. I'm a Disney nut. If I don't get to Disney World every other year, I get a little antsy. Sometimes every year. So that's not exactly travel, but it is really fun.
That's really neat. We took our boys to New York team, year, and I'm a huge baseball nut, so I love the Yankees. That's always been my favorite team. And we took them to their first Yankees-Red Sox game. And it was a wild experience. It started out seemingly in a disaster with rain and, preschoolers meltdown, whatnot. And then just turned magical. The clouds parted and the kids got happy once they started eating and drinking.
It always helps.
And it was great. But man, New York was a blast. So I feel your affection for that city. I wasn't keen on my wife's idea to wake up and be the first folks on the Brooklyn Bridge for a photo session. Love the photos now that we have them, but that was hard.
You worked for that.
We did. But those are all neat places. But I sure would love to follow your sister and mom to Amsterdam and check out those tulips. That's neat.
Yeah.
Well, let's circle back to, it sounds like you grew up in a loving home with wonderful sisters, wonderful parents who gave you the support you needed, but weren't, say, the helicopter parents we're so used to seeing today. What was the next chapter of life? When you moved away from that kind of fun home in Mandeville, where did you go next?
Well, I stayed in Mandeville for a long time until I moved here in 2007.
Okay.
But I guess I moved out at a young age. It's some marriages, and well, that's a whole other thing.
We don't have to go there.
That's a whole other thing. But I guess my first grown-up chapter of life was working as a dance teacher. One of my loves was dancing growing up in high school, and junior high school, and really loved to dance.
Help me picture, what type of dancing are we talking about? Are we talking about the high school dance team, like the Wavettes, or classical dancing, or
I was one of the ballet people. I trained at Petrie Dance Center in Mandeville with Constantine and Kelly Petrie. I loved it, and they taught me wonderful technique and a lot of content. But I just wasn't, my feet, my body type. I wasn't a ballerina kind of girl. But then I enrolled in Southeastern. And that was back in, 93, I graduated. So I went to Southeastern in 1993, and you could plan your own classes and your own schedule. You didn't have to talk to a counselor. So you could just kind of go on the computer and be like, okay, I want to take this. So I think I had like 4 dance classes, 1 English and 1 math for my first semester. And it was awesome. So anyway, at Southeastern, I discovered modern dance, and it's like, no, you don't have to wear the point shoes, and okay, you can have your technique inform your movement and do something else that is wonderful and just as valid and great. And so that's more my style, is the modern dance kind of stuff. I can't dance too well anymore. I'm getting old. But anyway, so I started taking classes there, and life happened. I ended up dropping out of school, getting married, and I needed to get a job. So I knocked around a few different ideas. And back then, if you needed a job, you looked in the newspaper in the classified section. And there was an ad for a dance teacher, a children's dance teacher, and it paid like $15 an hour. It was like gold, great.
Yeah, back then that was big bucks. Yeah, that
was fantastic for back then. And what it was a lady, Sherry Utzler, had started this company called Steppin' Out in Mandeville, Covington, New Orleans, and she would go all over to like daycare centers or private schools and teach classes. So she had some teachers that she would hire to go and teach classes at all of these schools. So she would collect the tuition, of course, or we'd collect it for her, and then she'd pay us our hourly out of the tuition, which was pretty generous, really. So I would travel all over and deal with all of these kids and their parents and the daycare owners or the teachers there. And, I was an itinerant kind of dance teacher, and I would teach all over the place. And it was great because I was just kind of floating along doing my thing and making, I was always kind of broke, but it was paying well enough, and I was enjoying what I was doing, and I was learning a lot. Because just researching new ideas and going to the library and bringing home stacks of books and looking at all of the sources in the back of the book and then ordering that book and trying to do something different. And even back then, I was incorporating art into the dance classes that I would teach. So it was kind of a multidisciplinary kind of thing. So she moved to Egypt, and she offered me the opportunity to buy her company. And I was only like 19, I think it might have been 20, to buy her company. And she wanted $6,000 for this dance company. And my dad's like, well, why don't you just start your own, And it just, just if she's leaving, you just step on in and just take it. And I'm like, well, I just didn't feel right doing it that way, because she's the one who had laid the groundwork for all of these different things. And it would just be easier for me just to say, okay. And it worked out well because she let me just pay her monthly. So I was able to collect the tuition, make more money than I had made before, and also pay her off too. So it was a win-win for both of us.
Sure,
so
and you inherited those relationships, so you didn't have to go sell a new product to these schools. You were kind of plug and play.
And they already knew me too, but also it was kind of, for the ones where I wasn't their teacher, there might have been somebody else. It's not like, right. So
I can tell you as a parent, that dynamic where you go from school to school is wonderful, because I know,
Yes.
my youngest is still in preschool, and when, for example, soccer shots comes around, and there you get to play soccer.
Right.
They do it with the dancing too.
Yep.
But you don't have to take them somewhere. The logistics is so much easier on parents.
Oh, absolutely. And we would do a recital with costumes and everything. And I was so young doing all of this and just figuring it out, and just, it was a lot of fun. I credit my dad and my grandpa also in some ways for kind of giving me that entrepreneurial, I can never say that word. Say that word.
That entrepreneurial,
anyway, you get what
DNA.
I'm saying. Just to know how to kind of run a business, maybe badly, but do it and figure it out as you go along, and just, this is what we're doing, okay, and it works. So, fill in the blanks, but I just
was that something you expected to embrace, or did it just kind of surprise you when it happened? Because you mentioned your parent, your dad, your grandfather, back to the stationery store. There's an entrepreneurial history there. Is that something where career day, when you're 13, you're thinking about one day I'll own a business, but maybe not know what type? Or was it something that just was like, wow, this just happened? And,
I had daydreamed about so many different businesses. Gosh, okay. From like time I was like this high. I mean, one of our favorite things to do was like play store, or, when I was like 8 years old, my dad still chides me about this. I opened a bank. So it's like, okay, Dad, I'm going to open a bank. You want to invest in my bank? Or, I'm going to have a plant store. And so here's some cups of dirt, put some seeds in the dirt, and here, buy this. It's going to be a plant one day, And so, and then I have multiple journals filled with, a lot of drivel and some brilliance and some just plans and ideas and stuff like that. And when I was in high school, I loved, I loved writing and sewing. And those are two of my favorite high school teachers. Miss Martin, who had a fashion and textiles class, who kind of told me that, yes, you can do this. You are good enough, which is huge. I was thinking about that when I was thinking about this interview and different people who have been influences in life. And that was one. And it was like just somebody to kind of write you a permission slip to say, yes, go, see where it takes you. Or, of course you can. And I think it's just an invaluable thing. And it's such a small thing, really. And it's something that we can do for each other and for kids and students and everything, to be that person, to be a cheerleader and to say, yeah, why not you? You can do this. And the kid has to be interested in it, obviously, but
and it has to be sincere.
And say, hey, sew a dress, hey, how about color theory? Hey, have you seen the designs? And anyway. But
I think you've hit on something that's gold, in that, the confidence a kid can deposit into their self-worth is so much bigger than the small amount of energy, attention, thought it takes to pay that compliment.
That's true.
You can do something that doesn't take much of your time, energy, attention, or money that could be life-changing for a kid. Absolutely. But most of us don't stop to think about that. And so it's neat that she did that for you, and now you're passing that along.
Right. But as far as that goes, because I'm going all over the place here, but so one of the things that I had wanted to do was open up like a clothing store that had vintage clothes and new clothes. And I had like sketches of what it would look like. It was going to be called Nouveau et Vieux, which I think means new and old in French, and my pronunciation is probably terrible. But anyway, I just, had thought, hey, maybe this or maybe that. And, and I had tossed around the ideas of having like a dance studio also. And I don't know, it just seemed natural to just go into some kind of business. I never saw myself really working for other people, although I've always been, if I do say so myself, a pretty good employee when I have worked for other people. But no, it just seemed kind of like a natural progression of things, to work a business and see if it panned out. And then if it didn't, then try something else. And I think that's a great creative advice for anybody in anything. And, you know, I know I'm a consummate dabbler. That's kind of, you know,
Right.
I think one of my favorite quotes is always be intoxicated. And I don't know exactly who said that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure it was somebody profoundly important, or maybe it was me, but no, I read it somewhere. But it's not about alcohol, because no. It's about
Right. Yeah.
being
That's what you mean.
intoxicated by some kind of thing. You know, no matter what it is, whether it's, you know, French literature or paper making or needle felting or leather work or whatever. Try as many possible things as you can, because all of those dots are going to connect some kind of way, and nothing is ever lost. You know, you might decide, okay, well, I'm going to try this. Oh, well, maybe that wasn't for me, or, oh, I only did that for a month and then I went on to something else. But that experience is going to inform another experience, and then that's going to, you know, influence something else. And then you might, you know, get to connect those dots later and be like, oh, wait, hey, I learned about this when I did this. It's just fun to think about how everything works that way. So
Yeah, that is, it's really neat. So clearly you had a bunch of ideas for businesses, and but I'm also not getting that you plan to be a boss and a business owner at 19 years old, but yet you found yourself there, and it seems like it was a good fit, and it sounds like it worked, and it sounds like, although that's not exactly what you're doing today, that certainly was great preparation for the business you now own and run, and the artistic endeavors that you now support and sponsor. I want to take a brief moment, if you don't mind, Melissa, because we've got a comment coming in here from our friend Ryan Griffin. Ryan, thank you for watching the show. And Ryan just simply asked, how are you doing? So, Ryan, I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to let anybody who's watching live know that you have the ability here, if you're watching live, to comment. So if you have a question, a comment, like Ryan, just anything, feel free to chime in, and I will do my best to share it with Melissa. So, Melissa, you want to answer that to Ryan? How you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. Life is just grand. So I am so thankful every day to be able to do what I do and share art, creativity, and everything in the lives with children. It's a humbling thing to be a part of the lives of so many of the kids in this community, and to be embraced by their families and trusted also. I don't take it lightly, and I'm thankful every day, and honored, really. Did I say that already? But
no, you can't say it enough.
Still true.
Yeah. Well, and look, we're thankful too, as someone whose kid is in your class every week, plus they'll do camps and whatnot too, parties at other times, both my boys. But it's neat to have a place where you trust someone to nurture your child's important creative instincts, and have a place where they're safe and loved and protected. So let's talk about that business. I'm going to put up a link here that's been shared by our producer, Daniela and Dennis. So we're talking, of course, about Sunshine Studio, and we have here in the comments a link to the web page for it. But tell us about Sunshine Studio, its history, and kind of what you do.
Okay, well, Sunshine Studio is a creative arts center for kids. We do art classes, art camps, different workshops, parties, of course, summer art camp, kids' night out. Sometimes I can't stay up that late anymore, but anyway, and we cover all kinds of different techniques and mediums and inspirations. I try and provide fresh, new content for the kids who come to me, and try not to repeat lessons ever. I mean, it's getting kind of hard since we've been in business since 2009, and I have to do some reruns, because a lot of these kids are like in college, and I'm like, well, wait, we did that lesson, all the kids who did the lessons before. And it's like, no, we can't repeat that lesson. No, you can't, because those kids are in college now, and you have a whole crop of new kids. And, that's just fun. You mentioned that we were formerly the Big Red Barn.
Yeah.
And that is true. In 2009.
There's got to be a story behind that name, because I don't remember there ever being a Big Red Barn on that property. But
well, the mailbox is still a Big Red Barn. So there you go.
Oh, okay.
But no, and we did have an award-winning parade float a couple years back that was a barn, but it disintegrated. Anyway, so in 2009, I started that company on our property on Weinberger Road. My daughter's father and I moved to that house about a mile from, a mile down for First Street, I guess that's
okay. Yeah.
Anyway, so on that property, there was the old farmhouse, which was fabulous. And then next door was like a converted detached garage that we would call a cottage. And it had a bathroom and a little kitchenette in there and everything. And then we also had a Big Red Barn. So, you know, I had been involved in all kinds of creative things that we don't even have time to go into yet, but lots of discipline-based arts education, different things with kids, like music appreciation classes that I had taught, movement, dance, all that kind of stuff, working for St. Tammany Parish School Board. Anyway, so it was all in my wheelhouse to open a creative arts center or something. My daughter was 2 at the time, and I needed something that I could do with her. Wow. So it just worked out well to, okay, we'll turn this little cottage into our, you know, we did Mom's Day Out initially, like 3 mornings a week. I started that way, and we did art classes and parties and stuff. And so it's just kind of grown in its own organic happenstance sort of way. And the business, I mean. Anyway, we had a Big Red Barn on the property. So when I was trying to figure out
a Big Red Barn, but not on Railroad Avenue where you are.
Correct. And this was on Weinberger Road in 2009. So anyway, life happened. I ended up having to leave that house and find a place where I could have my home and my business together, because I had started building up a clientele there. I operated for about a year and a half and was relatively successful. I was gaining a name, and people, you know, were interested in what I was doing, and it was great. But I needed to leave. So I needed to find a place where I could take my daughter and we could live there and also continue to build what I had already started. So drove around, searched for places that would work, where, you know, you could have your house under the same roof, but not have people walk in and like see your laundry on the couch, you know. It's just, I didn't want that. So anyway, I was not having much luck. And then one day I was driving down East Railroad, and there was a little sign about that big on the post for rent. So I called it up and called the number up, and my daughter was asleep in the back seat of the car. I called up Earl Smith, who owns Smith's Landscaping. Yeah, good. And it was his house. He had just bought it and was renting it out. So I remember talking to him on the phone, and I'm telling him, okay, so would it be all right if I rented your place, but like I had like a dozen kids there painting also, and you know, did art classes there? I mean, most people would be like, are you out of your mind? Right. But Earl was totally down with it. So he met me there. I ran through the house, kind of looked and said, okay, this can be my room and this can be the living room. We can close this off. And it just worked. So signed the lease with Lily still sleeping in the car, and then it was done. And that was a jump, but it worked, and amazingly it worked. And so as far as the Big Red Barn, I had already started building this business called the Big Red Barn. So it just kind of made sense to call it the Big Red Barn when I moved. I had no idea that I would last as long as I've lasted. So, you know, I just figured, okay, this will work. What's next, you know? That's funny. So, people were always confused. Well, why is it called the Big Red Barn? Well, we used to have a Big Red Barn, but we moved. So that's essentially what happened with that. But now it's Sunshine Studio.
So when did that transition happen? It seems recent to me. What brought that on after all those years?
Right. Well, I just never changed the name because it just seemed like, I don't know, more trouble than it was worth, or we were doing just fine called the Big Red Barn. And it was kind of like a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge, secret sort of thing. Like when you knew the story, it was like, oh, okay. And we had the mailbox too. Anyway, so COVID happened, right? And so we're paying rent at this house. Actually, let me back up a sec. We moved. I ended up remarrying in 2012. My dear, dear, sweet knight in shining armor husband found me in 2012. And we all lived in that house. It was really a strange, crazy life to run a studio and to have a household under the same roof. We just did it for 4 years, but you know, we were so glad to move. So we bought a house in Hammond and then took over the entire house as the studio. So anyway, paying rent for the studio and doing fine with it, you know, not getting rich, but sustaining it well enough to make it worthwhile. So COVID happens and we're still renting the house and it's like closed indefinitely, right? We didn't know how long.
Yeah,
COVID
true.
was
You
gonna
didn't know
last.
when you get people back in person. Great point.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, okay, how long are we going to pay rent? Is it, you know, and we did, I think, until, I want to say June or something. And it was just got to be this question, well, you know, how long do you hold on to a house and pay rent? You know, so anyway, long story short, too late, is we ended up buying the house. Earl had told me for years that I could buy it from him if I wanted to, but I wasn't in a position to. It took me a long time to build the credit, and that's my lesson for life. Watch your credit.
Yeah, no, that's a great tip, but also
pay
that's
attention to your credit,
kids.
it's so important. Anyway, but things improved over time. Anyway, 10 years after I signed my lease for that house, we were finally able to buy it, and I credit my husband for that because he's been a major gift and to all of the children in Ponchatoula and Hammond for Sunshine Studio and lasting as long as it has. So it's definitely a labor of love. But anyway, we bought the house, and the house needed some help. It had been, you know, it had been years. It needed a paint job. There was a lot of brown wood inside. Earl had told me I could paint whatever I wanted to in that house, except for the woodwork that was still wood. And so like the first thing I did after we bought it was paint everything white, like all of that cypress work that was wonderful and beautiful, all the siding. It's great texture. It just needed to be brightened up a little bit. And so that's exactly what we did. And the reason why the Sunshine Studio name came about was I was trying to figure out what to paint the exterior, and I saw a picture of a house with gray paint and a yellow door and then the red brick, and I was just taken by it. And I thought, okay, well, yeah, that's what I want to do with the house. We had already kind of decided not to paint it red because that's just something it's just a little too much. Although it could have worked, but anyway, I've been wanting to change the name anyway. So the name was informed by the paint job, really. So that yellow door, I'm like, okay, well, it's not going to make any sense to call it the Big Red Barn if it looks like that. So what can I do? And so I grabbed my handy dandy journal and I started scribbling. That's what I do. So I live in journals. And I came up with Sunshine Studio. My mom and I were at the beach at the time, and I kind of look over at her, and I had drawn out like the logo for it and had all of these different ideas with, okay, well, what could we do? Oh, we could say shine bright. Oh, anyway. And I'm like, Mom, what do you think about the Sunshine Studio? She's like, I don't know. And I'm like, no, that's it. I'm doing it. So if you ask somebody and you already know the answer, and it's probably the right decision. So yeah, that's why Sunshine Studio turned into Sunshine Studio.
Story. Let me track back to one of the key details you revealed there, which was, as you described him, your knight in shining armor husband. Let's take a moment. You told us a lot about your wonderful sisters and parents, but let's talk about him because he sounds critical to not only your happiness and that big smile on your face, but the success of your company and much more. So tell us about him if you don't mind.
Well, Brian is my sweet husband. We've been married now for 11 years. No, not yet. 11 years this year. We were married in 2012. And he was working as a pilot when he met me. And he did aerial imaging. He worked for a company called DWAS, Desert Wind Air Service. And he would go all over the country and shoot aerial imaging photos. So kind of like Bing Maps and stuff like that. They have great camera systems in these planes. So anyway, and they fly lines. And so he was working as a pilot, and I don't know, he came down to Louisiana. It was his first time working in Louisiana, and we ended up meeting online, and we're a success story for that. So it's not all duds, but and he liked me. So
that's great.
He just wanted to just make it happen, and so yeah, we ended up engaged very quickly, and he continued. He transitioned from working as a pilot throughout the country to being chief pilot for that company, and was able to have a office at the airport and manage the fleet of airplanes for his boss. And one thing led to another, and later on he ended up having his own company called Skylens that does the same stuff. And so he manages, I think, honey, what is it, like 20 airplanes y'all have?
Oh wow, that's 20, a fleet.
22
that's
or
impressive.
23. I don't know. They rotate in and out. So he manages pilots, and he doesn't fly anymore, not much. That's a whole other thing. But he's very much into the aviation world, and he's just a goofy guy. We kind of share the same brain, although I would never fly an airplane because I'm the scariest person. I get scared of everything. I'm the biggest ninny you ever met. But you know,
that's a neat love story, and it kind of informs the evolution of your business, right? I mean, as you kind of move into a property owning, a real business with a website and a name and
I had a website before.
Okay.
But yes.
You know who's chimed in, who would know, is our mutual friend Jennifer Quay Robertson. So Jennifer and I went to high school together, and she remembers the Big Red Barn because her sons and niece and nephew all have been going since 2009. And she just says mom days out were great. And you know, Jennifer is one of the top real estate producers in the whole state, not just
we bought 2 houses from her.
Yeah, well, you helped contribute to that.
Jen.
Yeah, no, it's probably Mom's Day Out probably played a big part in helping
3 houses. 3.
Wow, whoa.
Yeah.
Wow. No wonder she loves you so much. Well, Jennifer, tell Bud I said, hey, please. You know, I miss you guys. I don't see y'all often enough. They have a beautiful family.
They do.
So I'm enjoying this, learning more about your business. Why don't we break down, if you don't mind, a few of the different services you provide?
Sure.
You kind of went through a list earlier. I know you do, for example, weekly classes because my son's in that. You obviously do birthday parties. My kids have attended that. But you also do camps. And, you know, as I understand it, you have a lot of different camps with different themes. Could you tell us a little bit about all those services?
Okay, so what do we have coming up? We have, I try and keep everything fresh. Next week, we have a Galaxy camp where they'll be doing, I think, resin and pour painting. I can't remember. I plan everything out. I write it all out. And I can't remember what it was, and then I look and find it out. So there's one, and then there's a sweet shop one next week also. There's a couple of sewing camps tomorrow and then Monday. So we do teach kids how to sew starting at age 8. We have summer camps coming up. So our summer camps are 1 week long. Generally, the kids come from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And this year we are doing weeks that are inspired by different kind of art movements. So we have 1 week of surreal art, another one of impressionist art, another one of pop art, expressionism, and I'm going blank on what the other one is. Oh, one is just kind of a overview of lots of different kinds of just fun stuff. We're kind of cherry picking all the best bits and mashing it all up into one camp. So I forgot to turn my phone off, and the Muppet song is playing.
That's okay. It happens.
That is my ringtone. Is the Muppet show.
I'm glad that happened
I apologize. I
And
meant
if you
to
need
do
to take
that.
that, go ahead. We can.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
But no, I'm glad that you mentioned the Muppet song, because I understand that your puppet Bandit is a big hit. Tell us about Bandit, the puppet at your studio.
You know, it's amazing. The kids like beg me to work Bandit, and I don't know. I guess since I had started working with a lot of younger kids, if you're introducing a lesson or something, I use a lot of books and anecdotes and sometimes games and things like that. Anything to make the lesson more dynamic and interesting. And somewhere along the way, I started using puppets. And at this point, I think I have probably like 20 or 30 puppets. Oh, wow. But the main guy, like our mascot, is this black and white dog named Bandit. And the kids love it. And he's just really dopey and funny and goofy. And he lives up here. And, we'll be talking about whatever content we're talking about that day, depending on the group of the kids also, and how old they are, and if they think if I think they're gonna look at me like I am insane, I won't bring the puppet out. If I think they're gonna respond, I'll do it. But it's amazing to me that even the older kids might be sitting there looking at it but they're enjoying what's going on.
Yeah.
At least I like to tell myself that. But anyway, Bandit's a big deal. He's yeah. If you know.
We're going to have to invite Bandit back on the show. Maybe you guys can make a duo here. Well, yes. you clearly love what you do, Melissa. I mean, when you talk about it, there's an effervescence to the way you describe this work and a big smile on your face. What particularly do you love about what you do? What draws you to this, and kind of what's kept you at it, educating kids on some form of art, one or another, from dance to painting or drawing to sewing. But what's kept you in this line of work this long and continuing to smile all these years or decades into it?
I said earlier, I just feel like I was just a big kid at heart. I've always connected well with children. I'm not quite sure why, but I just have. And I think one of the best things about what I do is I get to try out and experience so many new things, and I get to share them with these kids, and the kids really respond to it. So it's work sometimes, of course. Sometimes I want to stay home, but then once I get to the studio and I open that front door, the smile's on my face, and I often ask myself, are you acting or is it genuine? And I think it is genuine. I don't quite know why. I mean, sometimes you might be tired or be dealing with a challenging situation and you're like, everything's fine, but so maybe there's an element of acting, but for the most part, I'm just thrilled to see these kids coming up my walk and just excited to be there and to see what we have going on. Back in 2009, when we started, there was a little boy named Graham who was he might not even remember going there, but I remember him coming up and being always so excited and saying, "What are we learning about today, Miss Missy?" And he was just so excited to see what we had in store. And, I think any kid who comes to the studio after they've been there a couple of times, especially, they know that whatever we're going to do is going to be fun. I mean, why wouldn't you want to be in a job where you got to just kind of play all day? Why not? So I guess that's why, because it's fun.
That's cool. Well, walk us through a day in the life there. So, and clearly you're an upbeat, positive person. You're focusing on the probably most fun part of the job, playing with the kids. But I know that there's a prep that goes into it, an administrative side of things,
right,
a cleanup side of things. Lord knows what you've got to clean up. I'm sure there's been vomit and everything else. But if you can, because there might be somebody watching who's thinking, "Man, this sounds great. I'd love to do that."
Right.
And hopefully they're wired like you and it would be a perfect fit. But in case they're the kind of person who might not want the whole package,
right,
that's what all goes into it, because you've got everything from business stuff like paying bills, to artistic. So Share that with us if you would.
Well, I mean, let's see. Okay, so we can talk about like yesterday. There was, I'll kind of go into that as far as what we have to do. So we've had all of these classes. Of course, we're wrapping up our 10-week session of classes right now, and so we're trying to finish up all of the kids' projects. So there is just stuff everywhere because, oh, this person needs to finish this and this one needs to finish that. Okay, let me get those materials and that. Oh, wait, you need this. Okay, and so I'm running around like a chicken with its head cut off. You know, it's like, okay, I'll get to that as soon as I can. And, you know, and I mean, that place can go from show place to shambles in just so fast it makes my head spin. Like, we had stuff just everywhere. And I have a sewing workshop tomorrow, so I have to like clear all of the tables. So it's a lot of just picking up and trying to organize things and prepping artwork and making sure that you have all of the right materials, keeping track of, you know, who is coming to what class, and, you know, doing outreach, doing social media, making flyers, doing, you know, that kind of marketing, which I'm thankful I have to market somewhat, but I've built enough of a base where, you know, my stuff fills pretty well with it. You know, I can just kind of put stuff out there and I'm going to do okay. Usually there are always some duds. It just depends. But it's a lot of trial and error too. Like if one thing doesn't work, well, okay, that might have been a bad day for that one, or okay, that theme didn't quite hit. And so there are some cases where I do cancel something if I only get 1 or 2 signups, and then figure out, okay, well, we'll try that another time, or maybe we need to tweak this a little bit. Constantly changing and learning. So you have to be flexible and try and give people what they want. You also have to make sure that you know something about, or you have an eye for digital design and things like that, for some basic marketing, because people are going to respond to cute. We all do. Yeah. I mean, you see a flyer, an ad for something, and if it's cute, you're going to automatically think, oh, well, I want to be a part of that. And, you know, so many, you know, a little, you know, a piece of typing paper with ill-placed, you know, text and bad fonts is not going to do it for you, you know? So I wear a lot of hats, and I'm thankful that I'm able to do pretty much everything on my own. I don't have to have somebody build my website. I don't have to have somebody do the graphics, or, you know, the most help I have is like during summer camp, I get helpers come in because we have a lot of kids that come through, and I cannot handle that on my own. So I'm very thankful to have helpers for those kinds of things. But, you know, it's a constant, not baby, that's not really the word, but maybe obsession. I don't know. Yeah. It's a creative thing. So it's just, as back to the same thing. It's fun. It's like I'm playing all day, you know? So.
Well, circling back to the topic of helpers that you brought up, you have a 16-year-old. Is there any interest there in getting family help, or is this one of these things like my mom's antique shop was to me when I was 16, the last place I wanted to be? What's the dynamic there like?
Lily Grace is my 16-year-old, and I only have one child, and she's it. So she is a phenomenal helper when she's in a good mood. So, it's always a lesson, isn't it? Like
any parent can relate to that. Everybody watching knows what you mean.
It's such a parent thing where, you know, y'all bring your kids to me and they're like, you know, oh, I don't know, was he good? And I'm like, well, yeah, you know, they're always so much better for me than they are for, you know, their own parents, which I like to think about my own kid. When she gets a job for somebody else, she's going to be a much better employee for anybody but dear old mom. You know, so, but no, she's a rock star, really. She can, I mean, she knows everything. She's been doing this with me, either on my hip or watching me since she was 2 years old. So, you know, you cannot buy that kind of expertise as far as the way we do things. She just knows. So, she's been helping me every, for summer camp, I guess for the past 2 years, and she is more useful than a lot of like other people. But I have some
but I love how you zero in on that dynamic of a kid with their own parents. And I was reminded of it just a few hours ago. I've been coaching basketball, and one of my players was one of the best kids. He's been in my son's class for like 5 years in a row. And anyway, coached him. They played baseball together, basketball. Best player. He just responds. He just great head on his shoulders. But my kid's not playing baseball this year. So when I saw him at school about 3 o'clock this afternoon, I said, "Hey," and I'm not going to reveal his name, but I don't want to embarrass him or his parents. But I was like, "How's baseball?" And he was upbeat about it. He's like, "Yeah, well, he told me about his latest game." And I was like, "Well, how's playing for your dad?" And it changed. He goes, he put his thumb down and kind of. And our other buddy, who's the other coach of the team, I said, "Well, what about Coach Matt?" And he lit back up and he was like, "Yeah." And and I know his dad's a great coach. He coached my kid. He's coached but nobody wants to hear it from their own parent. So
nope, they don't. But she's great though. She really is. She's a good kid.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, we're both blessed with great kids. And because I know you're a great mom and a great kid, I need to get you out of here and back to your family. But before we go, why don't we close out? If there's anything on your mind, on your heart, anything at all you'd like to share with our viewers, please do it now.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your kids with me and making Sunshine Studio a part of your lives. Again, humbled and honored by the embrace that I've had from families all over the area for years and years. So thank you so much for that, and keep coming back. Visit sunshinestudioarts.com to see what we have going on next. There's always something good.
Yeah, well, I've got again. The link is in the comments below. We've got it back up here again, and check it out. I can tell you, my boys love it. Countless kids that I know have had a blast there. So, Melissa, you have earned our trust. Miss Missy is beloved in the community for good reason, because now for all these years, going back to 2009, like the Quave Robertsons and other families, you really served us well. So for that, I thank you. And to our viewers, I thank you for sticking with us to the end. We'll be back not next week. We'll take off a break for Easter week, but we'll be back in a few weeks. So thank you so much, and y'all have a great week. Take care.